Welcome back to this new inspirational video. Today I wanted to go over a quote by Steve Jobs. Now, what do you think of this man? He died a couple years ago, that's true, but he left a legacy in the form of his company called Apple. Now, he left this quote where he said that the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And I always really liked that quote, especially during my studies in the early years of studying metaphysical teachings, because this was, well, he passed away in 2011, so it was around that time span or even before it still. And I started studying the mind in 2008 seriously, so I was still a fairly new student. But when I heard that quote, it always stuck with me because it's so fascinating. Ultimately, the way to look at this quote, if you look at his achievements, is that you could also say the people who are crazy enough to think they can achieve their dreams are the ones who do. Now, why would we say being crazy enough? Well, first of all, whenever you go for a dream that hasn't been achieved by you personally before, your friends and family tend to doubt in you. They would perhaps not say directly like, hey, you can't do it, or some actually have that issue with their families, but they will sort of laugh at you or sort of wonder, well, how are you going to do that? That's probably not going to happen for you. It's probably going to be so difficult that you'll fail along the way and you'll give up. That's what they assume about you, right? Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to let that get us down. We just want to be crazy enough to think that we can achieve our dreams in spite of what they think. That's how I've been living since 2008 specifically. That's when I moved on to my own, and I noticed a lot of my friends at that time, when I was still 18 years old, none of them believed in themselves. But yet here I was sitting in my own home, thinking I wanted to be a musician, or at least a music producer, and I wanted to have my own fan base. In the late 2000s, having a couple thousand people follow you online would be a big thing. Now it would seem like a small thing, because so many people already have huge followings in general. But back then I remember telling my family, like no joke, I would tell them I want to have 1,000 people following my work as a musician. I'm going to reach 1,000 people. And my family and friends at the time thought, well, that's kind of a crazy number already, man. I don't know if you can do that. That's the sort of look they gave me. They wouldn't directly tell me, but they did give me those looks, where you knew, I don't think they believe in me at all, but I was obsessed with this. I knew I could do this. I kept thinking, I can do this. I'm crazy enough to make this happen, even if none of you have done this before. I don't care. I'm gonna go for my freaking dream. And that's how I worked on it, that attitude. I had that intensity within myself. It was so intense, in fact, that at times I would cut people off even though they were close to me, because I just didn't want their opinion or ideas to infect me chasing the dream that I had at the time. So, not long after I made that decision, a couple months actually after it, I had about 4,000 people following my work as a musician at the time. So again, this was 2008. It was more of a big deal than it would be now. Because, currently with my channel I have over 1,000 people, and now it's not like super magical or over the top for people to witness YouTubers, in this case, have that amount of followers. But then I did it, and I told my friends and family. And they would be like, why? Always assumed you could do it. You see what's happening here? It's once you achieve something, people will start to believe in you. But that's not really helpful to us who are big dreamers. We're going to have to believe in ourselves. This is also another thing I keep stressing throughout my videos. So what Steve Jobs said is a very important statement to humanity, for humanity to contemplate. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Now, I changed his words around a little bit for my sort of content because it still works, because it's essentially the same, but it makes it more clearer to everyone out there, is that the people who are crazy enough to think they can achieve their dreams are the ones who do. Let that sink in. Are you crazy enough to think you can do it? Because if you are, you'll start saying that and feeling that within yourself. It comes from within, that conviction, that determination to succeed. And that overrides the old programming that was holding you back. With programming we mean a habitual way of living that wasn't conducive to achieving anything you wanted to begin with. That is the issue most humans face, is that they're living in a way that was programmed from birth, not conducive to them achieving anything of their own. Instead, it was meant to cause you to fit in, not to be crazy enough that you could change the world. Now, you don't need to have a dream where you're literally going to change the whole planet or do something absolutely huge like he did and building a company that serves so many people around the globe with digital products. If that's your dream, go for it, of course. But most of us, we have much smaller dreams, and yet we're still not crazy enough in a way to think that we can achieve it. And that's what you have to develop for yourself, that ability to feel and think that you can do whatsoever you desire. Now, an interesting thing happened to me back in 2008 as I was starting to work on my music more and more. I had friends who admitted to me they actually liked this idea of making music and they were talented at it in their own ways. But because they never believed they could do anything with it, they never did anything with it. But because they saw me do it, this guy out of nowhere, this friend they had out of nowhere, they started to believe in themselves and started working on their own music productions, and then they themselves created their own followings. Now, at the time, many of these people were still not as intense as I was with reaching the globe with what I wanted to do, but at least it started to spark something in them, a fire that they would admit that they didn't knew was there or could even be ignited within them. That is because they would say, their parents would always say, just get a job, just fit in, just do what's normal, don't do all these weird risky things. Why is it risky to go for your dream? A parent might say that because they're afraid that if you fail, things will go very bad for you. But in life, you're always going to fail. It's part of learning. It's actually part of winning. You need to fail along the way in order to discover better ways on how to go about achieving your own darn dreams. That's actually the beauty of it as well. You don't have to be afraid of failing. You just have to be crazy enough to think that you can succeed regardless of how many times you have to get up again. No matter how many times you fail, you get up again and keep going for that dream you have. But better make sure that the dream that you're working on is something that's important to you yourself and not dependent upon anyone else. It has to come from the heart. That's what big dreams are all about. Because the dreams we pursue just because of other people aren't necessarily the dreams that will make us the most happy in life. In fact, if we make it dependent upon other people, if those other people leave or somehow disappoint us, we might give up on our dream as well. But if the dream comes from within, because you're crazy enough to think that you can achieve your dreams no matter what, well then, you're working with a real dream. One that can actually do something valuable for you and your life and humanity at large in the end. As time ticked on, in 2008, I started to think I wanted to write my first book. Now, I wrote that book, but again, people were thinking, you can never do that, that's impossible for you. If you do that, that's so amazing. That's what they would say at the time. I was like, I don't care if you think that's gonna be amazing necessarily. I just know I want to do this for myself. So I wrote the darn book. My first manuscript, it wasn't great. It had a lot of grammatical errors. I didn't yet perfect my style of writing because it was my first book. But after a year of working on it, I finished the book, and then I found a way to publish it at the time, to have it physically in my hands, and people were astonished by that. Again, I'm not saying this to sound like I'm so amazing, because it wasn't even amazing to me even now that I did it. But other people again were like, whoa, I actually never knew you could do this, that you had it in you, but I'm very amazed by this. For some reason, it sort of makes some people think you're a big shot if you're an author. You're not really. It really depends on what you're actually writing. I was mostly writing about my life and what I discovered about the mind so far after 2 years of studying the mind. So it wasn't as in-depth as my videos now. But again, the point being, I was crazy enough to think I could do it. And then the proof came that I could do it, physically speaking. And that's what we're after with any dream we have. Even with this YouTube channel, I have to be crazy enough to think that I can reach people. Because as I'm crazy like that, I can see evidence that it's working for me. Now, what about you and your dreams? Have you been looking at your own dreams in this manner? Yes or no? because you gotta start doing it. If you do this one thing, your life is going to become absolutely phenomenal. You'll finally live in the way you were meant to live. You discover the reason for existing. It comes from within. It depends and it shows itself based on the dreams you have. You have a certain passion, a certain drive that keeps you going every day. And based on what that drive is all about, you should build your whole life around it. You should make sure that your whole existence is about that very one thing or multiple things that you are most passionate about, because it's only by doing that that you'll find true purpose and enjoyment out of actually living, physically speaking. It no longer is just a hard journey, because it is at times, but it's also a journey of fulfillment, an expansion of who you really are. So again, as Steve Jobs said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Change it around a little bit. The people who are crazy enough to think they can achieve their dreams are the ones who do. Now, are you one of them? I hope you are. Now, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to receive inspirational videos on a regular basis. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.